We hit the front in Africa at a place called Sedjenin in Algeria. I arrived on the SS Dorothea Dix at Oran, where we debarked and went to a Repel depot. And after we left, we got to Oran, we got in trucks and went to a Repel depot.
Explain what that is.
It's a replacement depot where
Right.
all of the troops go that are not assigned to a unit, and from there they ship you out to a unit, and you become part of it. And I was shipped out to the 434th Infantry, our 434th Coast Artillery Battalion anti-aircraft. And you want me to continue?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we
Everything you can remember.
we continued to these units, and eventually these units were given assignments, and proceeded to the front. And on our way to the front, we stopped to guard a bridge that was on a supply line near Sedjenin. And at that point, our first encounter was with an ME-109 and strafing us, and our 50 caliber water-cooled machine gun shot him down. So that was our first encounter with the enemy.
And you were with the 430.
4th Coast Artillery Battalion anti-aircraft.
And talk about the equipment you work with.
Well, the equipment we had at that point was a Bofor 40 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. It was actually made in England, and then we had one water-cooled machine gun as part of the same battery. And we continued with that equipment all through the rest of the North African campaign.
And you had what? You had your 45, right?
Well, I carried a 45 and a Thompson submachine gun.
Okay, the Thompson's a heck of a weapon, isn't it?
It's a great weapon. You can spread a lot of lead in a small area very quick.
Okay, so what was your next movement?
Our next movement was after the war had been over in North Africa. We were sent to an area away from the front where we got new weapons, and they were half-tracks with 50 caliber machine guns and 37 caliber cannons, still anti-aircraft, but called automatic anti-aircraft. And we got rid of the Bofors and the water-cooled 50s, and went in a protective state as we moved up. We landed at Salerno, first of all, in the invasion of Italy. We were at a place called Cape Bon in Tunisia.
Okay. Did you have any R&R there? Or
No, not much. That's when we regrouped and went back to our staging area.
where was the staging area?
Oran. We
Okay.
went out of Oran on a English troop ship and landed at Salerno. After getting off the boat into LCIs, we went into Salerno.
What's an LCI?
Landing craft infantry. And the
And
front of the boat drops down and you run out.
right. Now, from all I've seen, that's a pretty horrendous experience.
It's terrific.
Could you describe it? You know, waiting to go and
Yeah.
heading towards the
Well,
beach, how you felt, what you did.
Your progress depends on where they dropped the front of the boat. If they dropped it in 6 feet of water, it was slower progress. If they got it into 2 feet of water, you were able to get out and get onto shore pretty fast. But some of this was done in the heat of battle, and they dropped it when they had to. And they were English LCIs.
So, what happened after you hit the beach?
After we hit the beach, we groped and got into position to prevent strafing from enemy aircraft on our troops. That was our mission.
Okay. But you were no longer assigned to the anti-aircraft, right?
Oh yes, this was anti-aircraft.
Okay, so you were still assigned, okay.
Automatic anti-aircraft. Yeah, we were still anti-aircraft.
What kind of weapons? Was that the Bofors?
No, that's when we got rid of the Bofors.
Right.
We had the half tracks with the turrets and twin 50s.
Okay. You described to me of trying to shoot down a German airplane, right?
Yeah, I did. I tried.
And what weapon were you using?
Twin 50s.
Okay.
With an automatic turret.
Now that really kicks out a lot of rounds, doesn't
Oh,
it?
it sure does. Every fifth round is a tracer.
Right. Did you hit the plane, you think, at all? Or?
I don't think I did. I think he banked before he came into range, because I was firing when he was coming out my way, and I was firing out of range. And as he progressed, he saw me firing, I think, and banked and turned away.
Right.
And when he banked, I thought I had him, but I was too far off.
Because his belly was exposed,
Yeah.
right? And that's a shot you want.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah. But that was, that's pretty
I think
tough.
a little too far away.
Right.
Manning a 37 millimeter gun and 250 caliber machine guns on the
Right.
same turret.
Wow.
And then the other turret that was assigned to be with this unit was twin 50s.
And that's what you fired, right?
Yep, I fired the twin 50s. Yep.
Okay. So, when did you start to move up? You know, the
We
peninsula.
We followed the troops. When the ground troops moved up, we moved up.
Right.
We were behind them, about 2 miles behind them all the time.
Okay, so you were on the beach about how long, you think?
Oh God, maybe 24 hours.
And then you headed north up towards Rome.
Right.
Okay. Describe that voyage, that journey, I mean.
Well, it was one that we were all very concerned with, of course, that we could all stay together and do our job, which we did. But as we progressed up the peninsula, the airplanes from the German army became fewer and fewer. And like I said, when we got up above Casino, they decided to change us to ground infantry troops. And at that point, it was altogether different, of course, and some of our people had never had any infantry training. But Mark Clark decided that he'd give us an assignment along the coast, the east coast of Italy, and the heavier fighting would be inland. So the regular troops continued up, and then we went up along the coast.
Okay, who is Mark Clark?
Mark Clark's a 3-star general in charge of the 5th Army in Italy.
He was the big boss, right?
He was the big boss, yeah.
What'd you think of him? You said you saw him once, right?
I did see him. He came up to the front. We'd just been strafed by an ME-109 and Mark Clark.
Messerschmitt. A German Messerschmitt, right.
Yes, yeah.
A very scary airplane.
A very scary and fast airplane. Focke-Wulf 190s and a JU-88s. JU was a twin engine.
A Junkers or Junkers.
Yeah.
Describe that. That's like a big airplane, like a big boy, a
it's
bomber.
Yeah, it's a bomber.
And it looked like sheet metal almost, huh?
Well,
On the outside?
yeah, it looks sleek.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of their better airplanes.
So, were you ever attacked by them? By the
At
Junkers?
night, we were bombed by them.
How terrifying was that?
Terrifying as hell. It's the dark of the night. You don't know what's up there. But we were assigned to shoot a certain azimuth at a time prescribed by the man who was directing the bombing.
And somebody had him on headphones or something, right? Like
Yeah,
he was.
yeah, I did.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. and I took-
Describe that.
I took directions from the central unit to put our guns at a certain azimuth in a certain direction and to fire 1 to 5 rounds. And all the guns coordinated and fired at the same time, so we had an air full of anti-aircraft, not being able to pinpoint,
What? Sorry.
not be able to pinpoint the place where the bombers were. This unit that had charge had some means of prescribing the right distance and the right position of the enemy aircraft and the time to fire.
Were you on your radio then?
I was on my radio.
Okay. Now you were what you call a radio man?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you weren't in the Signal Corps? You were just assigned with your unit.
I was a radio man when I was assigned to man the Twin 50s.
And
The sergeant in charge told me, your turn.
the corpsmen and guys with radios were targets.
Oh, we had an 8-man shot in our first attempt to retrieve some of our wounded.
Where?
Geez, I can't remember the name of that place. I can't remember the name of that mountain. But it was our first battle as infantry, and at that point we had wounded that we couldn't get, with except when we displayed the Red Cross and our 8-man and rifleman went together to assist the wounded, and he got shot. The enemy shot him. So we had to wait overnight and go the next day and try again. So we had experiences like that off and on throughout the whole damn war.
So you went north, right?
Went north, yeah,
To Rome.
yeah.
You said Rome was an open city there. The Germans had left, right?
Germans had left Rome when we got there, yes.
Oh, the Rapido River is right here.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That was deep and fast and extremely difficult to get anything across it.
So how'd you cross it eventually?
Well, we didn't. We crossed it, but came back. We didn't stay there because they couldn't get enough troops across there. And we came back and proceeded on to Rome. But as I recall, it was always raining all the time. We were there and it was deep and muddy all around the area. And it was hard to get anything moved. And we fought our way up the peninsula to, like I said, to Genoa, and that's where it ended for us. Because the Germans surrendered about 70,000 troops at that point. The problem became immediate. We had to house them and feed them, and that was a struggle, believe me.
Did you make a lot of good friends?
Oh yeah, a lot of good friends.
Do you remember any of their names or?
Oh, I remember some of their names. I remember one particular gentleman, his name was Puskar, Sergeant Puskar. He and I met on the first attack that we made. And
Where was that attack?
I'm trying to think of the name of the village. And it was an observation point in the Circio Valley that was being used by the Germans to control our roads and highways. And we had to take that observation point, and that's my first contact with him. Excuse me.
How'd you take it?
We took it by laying down some mortar fire and immediately following it right into the foxholes.
Right behind it, right?
Yeah.
Like a rain that was moving up the hill,
Yeah.
and you were right behind
Exactly.
the mortars.
Yeah.
And the Germans probably had their heads down, right?
Oh, sure.
Now, was this a bunker or OP?
It was trenches.
Trenches.
Yeah. They were about 4 feet deep and full of Germans. Once we laid down the fire, they retreated to the pit, to the trenches to avoid the shrapnel.
How many of our guys went up the hill?
About 20.
And how many guys were in the observation post?
I would guess that altogether in the observation post there was about 15.
So when you hit the trenches,
They surrendered.
when you were heading up that hill behind the mortars, what was going through your mind?
Well, we were very concerned, of course, about how many enemy were up there and how they were armed. But they had all small arms, no. They didn't have any mortars or machine guns even. But it only took about an hour and a half to take that observation point. And then one of my best friends was a captain of the company.
Right.
He was one of my best friends.
Uh,
Wherever he was, I was.
Not only because he was one of your best friends, but that was your job, because you had the
That was my
radio.
job, yeah.
Describe the working relationship between you and the captain.
Well, the working relationship was that I was to be available to him during all times, whether in battle or whether not. I had to be at his command for communications with bigger units.
Which units were there? You were at the time with what unit?
We were with the 473rd Infantry Regimental Combat Team. We were Company C, and we had Companies D and E on both sides of us, and A Company was always in reserve in the rear. So we had contact with all of the companies, plus the battalion commander and the regimental commander, so that we were able to communicate and get assistance if we needed it, with artillery or mortars or whatever we needed. No, if the captain was busy, he'd tell me, call a certain unit and ask for fire on certain azimuth.
Right.
And I would do that. But he liked to make his own commands, and I would just provide him with the radio.
Right. Now, would, say, other people call in to you so they could speak with the captain?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so it was two-way.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain azimuth. That's like the angle of the...
The azimuth is a direction to a certain place on the map
Okay.
that we liked. First of all, we had 60mm mortars, which I didn't have a lot of faith in.
How come?
And so, because they're too small and the area that they cover is too small.
Okay.
And so, if we were in close battle, I'd call for 60mm mortars. But if we had some distance, I'd always ask for 81s. And then after that, we had 2.5. They were called a chemical mortar. Never used for chemicals, of course. But they were bigger and stronger. And then we had 105 millimeter.
That's a howitzer, right?
Howitzer artillery. That was the smallest artillery we had. And then after 105s, we had 155s. And We used all of them at different times. Well, yeah, we'd taken an area, and there was one civilian who apparently owned all the olive trees in that area where we stopped. And it was moonlight at night, and as I said, the trees were beautiful. And this lady, she must have been 50 years old or so, and that was part of her estate. And she said she was so pleased that the olive trees weren't abused at all. And she was so happy about that, because that was her income.
Now, and were you planning an attack around there at the time, or?
No, we were regrouping at the time.
Okay.
And getting more ammunition, clean socks and that sort of thing.
Clean socks are important.
Oh God, they bring them up in bags, and you just reach in and grab a couple. But they were clean, and our feet were dirty, of course. But it kept you from athlete's foot and that stuff. In the sea rations, you had the cans of beef stew, which were the favorite for all of us.
I bet.
And the K rations were a small, God, I'm trying to think what those were. They were mostly a small bar of chocolate and a little container of powdered coffee, and there wasn't much in the K rations at all.
Now you say Rome wasn't liberated. The Germans left.
Left, yeah.
Describe that.
Open city.
Okay. They said this is an open city, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Germans, which meant we didn't really lose it, we just left.
Yeah, we didn't want to destroy it.
Yeah. You walked through Rome, or no?
Walked through, we
trucks.
drove in jeeps.
Jeeps.
Yeah.
Now, the picture we have of you in the Jeep with those 5 guys, where was that taken?
Just outside of Rome.
Just outside of Rome.
Yeah. We had some flowers on the car.
Did any women run up and throw flowers at you and kiss you or anything?
No, they didn't run up to us. They stood beside the road, and if you stopped, they'd put flowers on your car, a Jeep. And that was the extent of that. They talk about civilians running up and trying to kiss you and all that stuff. We didn't have any of that. None of that at all. They were happy to see us. They were clapping their hands and yelling, but no personal contact at all. No.
In the picture of you in the Jeep, you have your you got your Thompson,
45. Yeah,
and your 45,
yeah.
and you're looking right at the camera. What was in the trailer behind you?
We had some mortar ammunition, 60 millimeter mortar ammunition, and we had 5 guys riding with us in that trailer.
That must have been a nice bumpy ride.
We came up to these positions overnight, and it was wet and rainy, and these trails were all on a mountain. And I remember when the Jeep I was driving the Jeep at that time, and as it almost died out, I shifted into the 4-wheel drive and pulled out of it very nicely. But they were 4-wheel drive, those Jeeps.
Talk about the Jeeps. They kind of helped win the war, didn't they?
Oh, you're damn right they did. Yes, absolutely.
What was so wonderful about the Jeep?
They didn't use a lot of gas, and you didn't have to worry too much about that.
How many miles a gallon a Jeep
I don't know. I'd guess, but I'd say 40.
No kidding?
Yeah.
What kind of helmet? You had just the steel pot, we used to call it.
Yeah, with a liner.
A liner, yeah. I read a story about one of the guys in Bastogne. Well, one went in this guy's helmet, went around between the liner and the helmet,
yeah,
and exited. And he says, why it never went through my head, I have no idea.
Well, I had my captain get the same thing.
Really?
Exactly. It shot up between it took a piece of his ear and went between his helmet liner and his helmet and lodged there.
You hit Rome. Did you go any further north after Rome?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Well, we went all the way to Genoa, which the Germans were on the run, and we were right behind them. And they got to Genoa before we did, and they surrendered at Genoa.
How many guys surrendered?
Well, they figured about 70,000.
Do you remember the units?
I don't remember the units at all. I know they're just a mass of troops. They were all, in just a few hours, they were marching out in groups, and we were just assigned to guard them.
So you helped to guard them?
Yep.
What was that like?
Oh, it's a touchy thing. You didn't know what to do or where to go. We finally got orders to steer them into a big stadium there, and that's where we left. Our unit pulled back, and we spent the night there. The next day we went back all the way to Naples to wait for shipment home.
The American soldier had a clear idea. He didn't want to conquer the world.
Exactly.
He wanted to go home, have a mortgage, have a car maybe, and go a family, raise them,
Yep.
and have a life.
Exactly. That's what we all wanted.
Were you ever scared that we might lose the war?
Never, not for a minute.
How come?
I had tremendous confidence in all of our officers, and all of the strategy that was applied seemed to be working all the time for us. I can't remember that we ever, my unit never was in a retreat, and I think that was because we all had the same purpose, and we all had the same motivation.
Did you ever fight any Italians, or had they already surrendered?
I believe they'd already surrendered. We had encounters with the enemy, and as I recall, they were all Germans.
Now, as fighting troops, the Germans were excellent, weren't they?
Oh, they were good fighters, yeah.
Highly trained, good equipment.
Yep.
Why do you think we won? Why do you think we beat the Germans?
Well, I think first of all we had better backup than the Germans did.
Equipment?
Equipment, and our reason for being there was very motivating, because we all wanted to get out of there, do our job, and go home. And with that in mind, it kept us going.